Hi, guys. So today I'm going to be breaking down rather quickly for you the Tolman style of arguing. So many of the terms and the components that I mentioned last time in the Monday file of argument styles, the terms here apply in the Tolman concept. Okay, so now this is the one time I'm really want to overstress. I really want to overstress. If you have any questions about Tolman, you got to text me or message me in some fashion because this can get a little confusing. Okay. The whole point of Tolman is creating an argument that you want to win, that you are ultimately crafting the perfect discussion. Okay. Whereas the Aristotelian methods are a competition, let's say in a debate, and you want to be prepared for whatever your opponent can throw at you, in a Tolman arena, it's a death match. And if you use a Tolman argument, you've already won. Just the fact that you start using this method practically ensures that you've won an argument. You're not leaving your opponent any room for gaining on your territory. Okay, so let me make this larger. This Tolman was developed by a British philosopher, and it's fairly young. It was in the 70s it was developed. It's very confrontational. Okay, so you're not concentrating on reactions from your opponent. You don't want to allow your opponent to have time for a reaction, is what it comes down to. It's built strictly on strict logos. So there's hardly any room for emotions or pathos. Okay. It's strictly facts, evidence, statistics. The whole concept of Aristotelian ethics or ethos is even diminished in this type of argument. It's not necessarily the components of being rude to your opponent. That's not what we're getting at. What I mean is you do not take the effort or the energy in promoting the critics themselves that you're using. You promote the theories that the critics use. So whereas in other argument styles, they want you to build up that sense of authority by promoting yourself as a critic and promoting other critics. With Tolman, you don't do that. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. You want to stick strictly to the logos, to those facts and evidence that prove without a doubt you are correct. Just to let you know, at the very end of the demo, I will have a quick example of how to work through this. So the more I talk for the next 10 or 15 minutes is going to sound really intense, but the example I provide is simple. Once you see the example, it makes a lot more sense. So this is a method of reasoning. It's a logic to approach in philosophy. Okay, and you can use induction, you can use deduction in order to create these examples. The concept of abduction, you notice that's missing. Abduction would not work for Tolman. Abduction is about possible solutions. So Tolman, on the other hand, is all about definite conclusions. Okay, definite claims. Okay, so some of these elements I'm going to go over, like I said, are going to echo from that earlier slide that was on Monday. So again, the claim is establishing the argument, the goal of the paper. This is your thesis for the paper. So sometimes I call it the main claim, which is the thesis, and secondary claims would be established within the additional paragraphs. To defend your claim, you of course need evidence. Okay, this is called the grounds. These defend your point of view. Through statistical evidence, you're establishing truths that defend your points of view. So when I use the word truths, that basically means neither side of the argument, okay, will disagree about an established truth. The earth goes around the sun, for example. There are 24 hours in a day, another example. So those are two simple ways of defining a truth that we all agree on. Okay, again, grounds, statistical evidence. Now, when you hear the word warrants, warrants are material and phrases that back up the grounds. Okay? What a warrant will do, it establishes how your statistics are supporting the claim. So let me go back a step. Grounds are evidence. Warrants are how the evidence supports the claim. So you're just using the warrant as an additional analysis that explains how the claim works. Now, there's an additional element called backing. It can be somewhat confusing, so I don't want to belabor the point. It's hard sometimes to distinguish a backing from a warrant. So again, I'm keeping this simple. But the backing is offering further support, showing how the grounds work. Okay? So where the warrant is specific towards supporting the claim through the grounds, the backing is showing up how your reasoning is working. So again, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to combine these two as one in our discussions. Okay. Now, a qualifier. These are important words that provide limitations, let's say, of how the claim will operate. So simple words or basic phrasing is allowing the claim to be more specific. A thing to keep in mind, when I teach this course in Lone Star campus, oftentimes students will turn in papers that are not specific enough. And that's because they're not showing qualifiers. You want to be as specific as possible. And in order to do that, you have to use words like many, most, a few, some. You want to show why the claim is reliable. So qualifiers answer to why, whereas backing and warrants explain how. And moving on to rebuttals, they basically function in the same fashion that Aristotle intended them to be. You want to acknowledge any possible objections your opponent may have. Okay. I will break these down further with more tangible examples. So I just wanted to get through the word list for now. Okay, so let me put it this way. The introduction, the body, and the conclusion, there's nothing radically different about these three types of elements in your essay. They still operate the same way. So the main thing I want to stress, remember, all paragraphs need at least 5 sentences. I always say 5 sentences or more because you want to be specific. You want to defend your evidence. You want to show how it connects back to your thesis. And that alone takes a lot of sentences. Just remember, you're embellishing the standard by establishing the importance of your claim. So in your introduction, the first 4 or 5 sentences, you're establishing the importance of your claim, and then you move to the actual claim, to the thesis statement. So using a deductive method, you'll have 4 or 5 sentences introducing the subject, and then your last statement is your thesis. Again, that's your claim. Now, the body's going to follow the logic of a formula. You will establish grounds for your argument. You'll supply a warrant that backs up your grounds. You'll supply a backing which backs up the warrant. And you'll follow that cycle of grounds, warrants, backing, grounds, warrants, backing, grounds, warrants, backing throughout the whole paper. So within a paragraph itself, you can have multiple grounds, warrants, backing. Throughout the paper, you will have multiple grounds, warrants, backing. The use of rebuttals, on the other hand, you can limit them to the closing section, the ending section of your body paragraphs. So that does mean you can concede your opponent has valid points, but then you want to refute the views by showing the weaknesses in those points. Okay. And finally, the conclusion. You're seeking closure. Just remember, you have to provide the main point, the main deductive reason for your argument. What is the final commentary of importance that you need the reader to understand about your argument? Okay. Now, there's a concept called syllogisms. These are logical constructions that confirm the topic you're discussing. These strengthen your whole point, your thesis. So just keeping this in the arena of an introduction statement, a syllogism in your introduction paragraph is vital to explaining how the subject is important, how your argument is being formulated, okay, before you get to the thesis statement. Now, with the syllogisms, everything that's read is basically constructing an elementary syllogism, okay? So a syllogism is composed of a major premise, a minor premise, and a concluding point. When I say concluding or conclusion, I don't mean the end of the paper. I don't mean the final point you'll make. What I mean is by conclusion, your main claim, your main argument. Okay? That is what the conclusion is all about. You can conclude from the minor and major premise this fact. Okay? So be careful when you visualize in your head the concept of a conclusion. Okay. Now, one way of looking at it, the major premise is setting up an inference of since A is true. Notice how I'm changing the language. Since A is true, the minor premise is then B is also true. And your conclusion will be, therefore, C is true. Because what you're doing, you're adding the major and the minor together, and you're getting a C. A plus B equals C. So in this regards, it's beginning to sound a little bit like algebra. And again, I'm keeping this on a simple, basic level. If you just Google syllogisms and look at Google images, they get terribly, terribly convoluted and chaotic. For me, chaotic. I don't like math. I never was good at math. This is the closest I get to math right here. So this is all based on logic, syllogism. So if you have an illogical concept in your head, you can produce an invalid syllogism. Don't get me wrong. But with correct logic and correct commentary, you can have a valid syllogism. A good example is the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was classically trained, and he's following Aristotelian methods, and a syllogism was invented by Aristotle. So despite the controversy behind Thomas Jefferson, his writing style was beautifully rendered in the Declaration of Independence. It has flaws in logic because of the time period, yes. The whole slavery question is a part of our heritage, and we have to admit it. But on the other hand, looking at the Declaration of Independence and what it's intending and what should be assumed out of it, it's a beautiful document. And it suffices in its argument if some Americans don't uphold it to the highest potential. So at any rate, going back to the major-minor conclusion, you can say, for example, as a major premise, all humans are major. I'm sorry, all humans are mortal. All humans are mortal. That, which basically, no human is immortal. No human can live forever. Now, that is a general comment. Okay, you can consider that a statement that's a warrant. All humans are mortal. So I'm going to take this up a notch. The minor premise is a little more specific than the general of the major premise. So the minor premise would be Socrates is mortal. So that's specific. A specific example of how all humans are mortal. Socrates himself is mortal. Okay. Then your claim, adding these two facts together, you can say Socrates is a human. And that could be a claim closing out an argument. Okay. So that's loosely based on a concept that Aristotle himself came up with. Okay. Notice in this case, I did not use the specific words of since this, then this, therefore. These are implied. If it's easier for you to think of how a syllogism will operate, by all means, use those words. But you don't necessarily have to embed them specifically in the text. We'll talk more about that later. Okay. One other major point I want to make. Each paragraph is a mini argument unto itself. If this does not make sense, please send me a note. Some students just take it in their logic that they have to write an essay with a beginning, a body, and a closing. And then they write something. It's better to view it as the multiple components that make up the argument. So, in other words, what I'm getting at, each paragraph that's a part of your essay, by itself, each paragraph is an argument. And you're adding up all these arguments together to get to your conclusion. If you think of it like that, you're building up your paper, like you're building up with blocks when you were in second grade or kindergarten, building up those Lego blocks. Okay? So each block is an argument, and you're building up a wall. to defend your argument. View it like that, and it makes much more sense when you're creating these papers. Okay. Now, to explain this page to you, the idea is here on the left. You've got topic sentence, secondary evidence sentence, an explanation, resulting deduction, and evaluation. These components are what I gave you way back when last semester, near the beginning of the semester. Okay? Those are what help construct the beginnings of a major paragraph. Okay? So what I've done, if you take these components and tie them into the syllogism concept, okay, the minor, the major, and your conclusion, you should be able to see how these miniature little arguments are constructed, and how, if you get into a argument-based paper, whatever your major is, you can defend yourself. You can validate all your evidence. So your topic sentence is establishing a secondary claim. I'm visualizing this as your body paragraphs. Okay. So your topic sentence is establishing a secondary claim that backs up the main thesis. Your secondary evidence sentence, okay, is providing evidence that backs up this claim. This is the beginning of a syllogism-like concept. This would be your grounds. The explanation of the secondary evidence sentence, by using your analysis skills, would be a warrant, and that's your major premise. So do notice the minor and the major premises are flipped in this example. It's just how it plays out. But it still operates the same way. You add the minor to the major, you get the conclusion. And then this is basically your resulting deduction. What you would do then with this concept, this inner working syllogism, you have an evaluation as your last series of sentences, maybe one or two, which connect all that evidence back to the thesis. You want to prove why all this information is relevant. What it comes down to, all evidence that you put in a paper has to connect back to the thesis. If it isn't obvious, you have to show that it is obvious. You have to explain it step by step. Any fact you put in a paper has to be proven it's valid and ties back to the thesis. Okay. The readers need to see, as I say here, the readers need to see the logic that's in your argument. So what it all comes down to, working sort of backwards in a manner of speaking, if you look at all your topic sentences, let's say you have a 6-paragraph topic sentence paper. You have a 6-paragraph paper. You take all your topic sentences, read them all together. You then have a resulting conclusion statement. This should confirm your thesis. This logic here of this bullet point is a deductive argument. Okay, going back to qualifiers. This is how you build a specific statement. Okay, you're basically strengthening the formula by, as I say here, attributing additional meaning to the text, to your statements. So if you, for instance, on this first line, ignore the blue italic word most. If you just say, students dislike Tolman argument methods at first, that statement by itself is too general. Okay? You can't back a statement like that up. You're basically saying all students dislike Tolman arguments. And there are some, there are some people out there who actually like arguing Tolman style. That's why you have to add the word most. Most students dislike Tolman argument methods at first. And in that way, I'm being specific, I'm being valid, and I can, with statistics, prove that. Okay. Another example, if you take out this first word and just say, history instructors expect high academic papers with solid argument skills. Sorry about the flow of the text here. But at any rate, again, I'm generalizing. I need to provide some sense of a qualification to explain what I'm getting at. So if I say some history instructors expect high academic papers with solid argument skills, you then know what the rest of the paragraph is going to deal with, how not all history instructors have this logic, but in a sense, you can infer from this, they should be following this logic. Now, there is a danger zone here. You want to avoid anything that comes across as overgeneralization. Okay? So, here, for instance, if you say everybody in composition classes these days consult Wikipedia despite its reputation, I can't back that up. You cannot say everybody is following a specific plan of attack or a specific idea. You can say some, most, a major part of. You say there's a difference there, but you can't say everybody. If I say everybody, that's overgeneralizing. If I say some freshmen starting out in composition classes these days consult Wikipedia despite its reputation, that's fine to say. I can back that up. That can be established as a truth. Okay? I'm not overreaching, in other words. So just remember the qualification, the qualifiers, that's a bad word. The qualifiers ensure writers make claims based off the evidence limitations. Okay, I'm not going to change anything about rebuttals. That may be another topic in a future lesson. You should have been taught rebuttaling in your sophomore year, so we'll keep that in mind. If you need me to go over this more in depth, by all means, let me know. But sometimes counter arguments are necessary within your discussions if you feel it warrants and builds up your defense. Okay. Now, here's a working example. Okay. I found this online and then I tweaked it. The title is establishing the point of this example paragraph. The most popular Sesame Street character. Okay, so I'm going to make a claim. This is my argument. Elmo is the most important character on Sesame Street. So notice how I've structured this with a qualifier, the word most. Elmo is the most important character on Sesame Street. With that as my main claim, I'm going to have to defend it and back it up and provide information that will show how that statement is a truth. This is actually using an inductive method. I'm starting with a thesis statement and working my way through the evidence. Okay? So, as part of my data, the grounds, which backs up my claim, I have statistics. In a preschool poll, 70% of the children reported liking Elmo more than other characters. Children laugh on average 33% more when Elmo's on the screen. In addition, Elmo is shown exercising twice as often as other characters on the show. So notice where I'm taking this and where Elmo is a figure of action. He's not passive and just sitting there and not like the children themselves are sitting there watching TV. And if you've ever seen a kid zone out on a television or a computer screen, that's what I'm referring to. Elmo is not passive. He's very active. Okay. So now I'm going to qualify all this with more information with my warrant. So to back up my statistics, these specific facts that I've found online and researched, the warrant. Elmo has children's attention more than other characters, and therefore has more potential to make positive change in preschoolers' lives. Okay, so this positive change that we're referring to is actively participating in playtime, interacting with the TV rather than just sitting there staring, zoning out, like I said before. Okay, so this information extends the information from the data. Okay, that's the warrant. Now the backing, again, is going to encourage and strengthen the warrant. The backing of all this information. Children create many of their habits through mimicry. And that's a major point that almost everyone understands. Once you have a kid, you'll see it for yourself. Children create many of their habits through mimicry. And we want positive changes in preschoolers' lives. So we're wanting to encourage a sense of social awareness in these young minds. It's good to be a fun and happy and playful child. Okay, we want to encourage friendship and cooperation and sharing. Okay, that's what Elmo's all about: sharing, cooperation. If they will imitate or mimic Elmo, then the program has been successful. Now, here's a qualifying statement. Okay, it's going to take the claim and move it up a notch. So now, what I want to clarify, in your paragraphs, you won't necessarily repeat your opening the topic sentence again. This is just an example of how you can qualify the evidence for the claim. Okay. I am showing you how the logic of a paragraph fits into the formula here. The qualifier would definitely have to have a stronger rewording, so it doesn't cause a redundancy in your argument. But be that as it may, the qualifier here is Elmo is definitely the most important character on Sesame Street. So I've extended it from most important to definitely most important character. So this definitely is making Elmo a specific element of the show. Now, if any of you have watched Sesame Street, you probably can figure out a counter argument right away. So to back that up, to be prepared for the counter argument, to prepare myself, the rebuttal. Other characters in Sesame Street may fulfill important roles, just like Elmo, and model positive behaviors as well, just like Elmo. However, Elmo's importance can be further stressed due to his recent influence financially for the program. And now, through that rebuttal, I can further my argument and take it on to another level of defense. Okay? In particular, this statement here about his recent influence financially for the program. In the 90s, there was a toy that came out, the Tickle Me Elmo, and it was about yay high. And all it did was wiggle, and he would giggle, and he would say, "Tickle me." You know, people went crazy for that gift. It came out right before Christmas, and there was mobs trying to get that toy. There were fights in Target over that toy. It was that type of. So Sesame Street, the corporation, gained a lot of money. and they found a way of marketing themselves in a better fashion. So through that logic, Elmo changed the whole concept of the program in a manner of speaking. Okay. And that's a whole nother topic. But this is the basis of atonement argument. This is how one constructs atonement argument for themselves. Okay? So, where we're at the moment. I want you to think about this for overnight. Soak it in. Make sure you understand it. Tomorrow, if you have any questions, hit me with the questions. You're going to develop, I'll give you the prompt, and then you'll develop your own Tolman chain of discussion, just like this, okay? And it will be something basic like the most popular Sesame Street character. I want to give you something that's easy to build off of without having to do research, okay? Okay. So that's it for today. I'm going to sign off. If you, again, as I've always close out with, be safe, and if you have any questions, contact me. Okay. And we're going to start building up towards more fun, argumentative styles. After this week, after today and after the exercise, we'll shift to Rogerian discussions. Okay. So again, be safe. I'll talk to y'all later.